Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for the fifth talk of the Activate Learning Education Trust Industry Insights. Today, during normal times, students at ALET schools and colleges would be exposed to a high level of employer engagement, and that's just not possible in the current circumstances. The Industry Insights talks are designed to provide students with insights into different industries and the plethora of roles within these. Today, we are joined by three speakers from Microsoft. Joel Bloomfield, who has held various roles within Microsoft, including as the higher education lead, and now works as the lead for Microsoft's cloud platform, Azure. Samia Ahmed, who has done some great work during her placement year at Microsoft as solutions specialist, and Jessica Milson, who joined Microsoft as a graduate in September 2019 as Surface Category Manager. So now over to Joel, who will introduce the company and his role within it. Thank you very much. Sorry, just having a slight technical issue getting Joel onto the, getting Joel heard.
Can everybody hear me?
Oh, brilliant. Welcome, Joel. Lovely to hear from you.
No worries. There's nothing like the joy of technology. Let's try again. Good afternoon. How is everybody?
All fine. Glad that you're here now.
Good. No worries. No, thank you very much for having me, first and foremost. So yeah, no, it's great to be here with you. I've really been looking forward to this afternoon, and first of all, thank you to you, Amy, and the wider team for the opportunity. It's something we like doing and gives us great pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with a little bit of insight into what life is like at Microsoft this afternoon. So I guess where to start, really. Well, let's start with you as the students. You know, you're a generation that has grown up with technology, right? It's second nature to you. It certainly, I'm sure, comes more naturally to you than it does to people of my age group. You know, it's how you talk to your friends. It's how you get your homework done, and most recently, it's been how you've been studying, and for almost all of you, I imagine it's how you spend your free time as well. So at Microsoft, we kind of call people like you digital natives, right? You probably won't remember a time when the smartphone didn't exist. In fact, most of you will probably only remember the phone before a smartphone as something that had an antenna that was probably big enough to pick up a UFO signal. So can you imagine a time when the only thing you could do with a phone, for example, is talk to somebody, and when even that, you know, was a struggle. As a young boy, I remember playing computer games and turning the cassette over in my computer once I'd reached the end of a level, and to be honest, it was pot luck as to whether the game continued or it crashed. So today, I really just wanted to, with my colleagues, spend a little bit of time talking to you about how technology has completely changed the world and will continue to completely change the world that we live in, and how exciting it is that your generation is the generation that have got this fantastic opportunity to shape those incredible changes that the world sees. So my goal today is really just to open your eyes up a little bit to the world of possibilities that exist for you. So I hope that sounds okay. If we could move on a slide. That'd be fabulous, please, Amy. Thank you. So firstly, who are we? So my name's Joel Bloomfield. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Jess and Samaya, who are going to say a little bit more later on about their journeys and what's got them to this point in their careers and what they've been up to at Microsoft. As you can see from the slide, I lead business development from an Azure perspective into two of our key markets here at Microsoft. Focused around financial services, insurance, and manufacturing and resources. I've spent about 15 years or so in technology. But life wasn't always that way. So in fact, at school, if I'm honest, I was about as interested in technology as I am in watching the news at the moment. And just on that note, I hope you're all keeping, safe and well. It's a very weird world that we find ourselves in right now. And it feels like some good news is long overdue for all of us. But this is really the first point I'd like to try and land with you. It's important to have targets and aspiration. I'm a great believer that talent alone will only really get you so far. And it's that drive and hard work really which nurtures that talent, makes the most of that talent and enables that talent to thrive. So I would say, my first kind of point is never be afraid to take a chance, never be afraid to deviate from a plan. Again, I'm a big fan of a plan, but never be afraid to deviate from it. And when those opportunities come along, grasp them. And simply put, I think that's about the only thing I've done. And I'm sure Jess and Samaya will kind of echo that in terms of taking their chances and how they've executed on those opportunities when they share a little bit about themselves later on. So if we could move the slide on one, that'd be fabulous, please. Thank you. So this is a photo of Bill Gates and Paul Allen, the founders of Microsoft, way back in 1975. Many of you, if not all of you, I'm sure will know Microsoft for Word and Excel, right? And if I walk up the high street now and ask people about Microsoft, they will say, yeah, you guys do Word and you do Excel. And you know what? They're absolutely right. But our company is far more than that today. And we're a creator of technology platforms like Office 365, Teams that we're using right now, Dynamics 365 and Azure, which is the part of the business that I sit in. Platforms really that give all of us, you, the opportunity to do more. And that's been at the foundation of our work since the very, very start and continues to this day. If we could just roll on a slide, that'd be fabulous, please. Thank you. So a lot has changed since 1975, perhaps not surprisingly. I wasn't even born then. And how we think about our business today is very, very different than it was, even just a couple of years ago. Let alone 1975, and this is really the next important point I'd like to make. Nowadays, because of technology, disruption in the marketplace happens in a much shorter period than it ever has done in history. In fact, I heard a quote the other day that I really like, and that's that the pace of change will never be this slow again. And for any of you studying business, really consider this slide our business plan on a page. For the purposes of this discussion, it's really designed to give you a little more insight into how we structure, how we think about the market opportunity, and hopefully give you a little bit of insight into the types of jobs and roles that are available at an organisation like Microsoft. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go throughout the next kind of 15 minutes or so. If I could ask you to move on a slide, that'd be fabulous, please. Thank you. So don't worry, I'm not going to turn this into a history lesson, but I think it is important to set some context. Industrial revolutions don't come along very often. Moments of change don't happen very often, as history shows us. Industrial revolutions are unique periods in time when everything changes. The way our society lives, the way our economy works, they change forever. And at the centre of these moments in time are really industrial revolutions. When new technologies and new inventions that make entirely new things possible come along. So, the first one happened kind of way back in the 1700s. It was really triggered by the invention of the steam engine and the first factories started to come about, making it cheaper and quicker to manufacture really simple things, right, like pots and fabrics and cutlery, etc. And then as we went into the 1800s, kind of the latter part of the 1800s, we saw this second industrial revolution, and this was triggered by electrical power, of course, which made all sorts of mechanical production possible to power these manufacturing plants. But it was really in the middle of the 20th century as a guy involved in technology when things got interesting for me, and that was when the third industrial revolution came about, which was with the introduction really of the mainframe computer in around about the 1960s. And think of these as huge, expensive, noisy machines that were really only available to governments and big companies that could afford, quite frankly, massive kit. And then, of course, we'll be familiar with, I'm sure, people like Steve Jobs and as I said, the aforementioned Bill Gates, pioneers that came along and developed this thing that we now call the PC, the personal computer. And it really brought all of this computing power of the mainframe into our homes. And it made it smaller and more affordable for us as consumers to get to grips with the opportunities that the mainframe types of technologies had provided only large organizations with previously. There was one other massively important invention during the third industrial revolution that completely changed the world that we live in, and I'll give you a couple of moments to think about what it was, and I'm sure many of you will have got the answer. It was the World Wide Web, of course, in 1989, which enabled the internet to take off, and simply put, 30 odd years later, it's impossible to imagine a world without it. We're now living through a time that scientists and economists call the fourth industrial revolution, and it's characterized by a few things which I want to call out, because these are really where the opportunities are for all of us, and you included. Things like ubiquitous mobile internet, small cheap sensor devices, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the blending of virtual and physical worlds coming together to create smart connected machines, homes, cars, banks, people. Every organization on the planet is becoming a technology company. And to give just a couple of examples of this, look what Amazon has done to high street retailers. Think for a moment about what Netflix has done to traditional kind of movies and films, and what Uber has done to the black cab. The opportunity for a career in technology really has no boundaries any longer. And it's one that, I remain deeply excited about, and you all should be too. Could I ask you to move on a slide, please? So this chart really just backs up what I've just been talking about. In fact, it's a little bit out of date, and just to put this in some context, Microsoft, in fact, just yesterday, I think it hit our highest ever capitalization of almost $1.5 trillion yesterday, which is just, a ridiculous amount. But as you'll see here, 5 of the top 6 organizations in the world are technology organizations. And I think that says an awful lot about the world that we're living in. And what does this mean for you? Well, it means opportunity. It means countless opportunity. And whether or not you have aspirations to have a career in a pure play technology company like Microsoft or not, it's more than likely that whichever organization you go on and work within and for will have a massive digital and technology influence. Could we roll the slides on one, please? Thank you. So what themes are driving this change? Well, I'll probably touch on just 2 or 3 today. So the first big technology change is something that we call big data. All of you will have done plenty of work with bar charts, line graphs, pie charts. They're all, of course, forms of data. And data is, really just information that you observe and collect to better understand the world around us. So, for instance, if I asked you to write down your favourite movie, favourite teacher, your favourite school lunch, gathered all of that information together in one place, you'd have what we would call a data set. And you could use that data to understand trends and show patterns and make predictions on what might happen next. And ordinarily, and certainly in the past, this data has been connected by humans with a pen and paper, and then more latterly, things like Excel. But of course, as we start to have more and more data, there becomes a bigger and bigger requirement for technology to play a place, and that's where the cloud comes in which we'll talk about in a moment. And we start to talk about technologies at technology organizations, things like data warehouses and data lakes. But really what is amazing is that we're collecting more data than we ever have done before, and that is driven by the huge amount and volume of devices that are connected to the internet. Just as an example, we as humans are sending 15 million, 16 million text messages, WhatsApps every minute, right? Hundreds of millions of emails every minute. Billions of PCs, laptops, iPads, smartphones are connected to the internet, as are your TVs, your Xbox, your cameras, even things like cars are increasingly becoming connected to the internet. And with this explosion of data being collected, people are struggling with it and how to make any sense out of it. And in the business world, how do they maximize the opportunity around the data and what that provides? So if I can ask you to move on a slide, please. So that's really where this thing that we call the cloud comes in, and companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon and others came up with this notion of the cloud. And think of the cloud really as just a gigantic global network of data centers around the world where all this data can be stored safely without ever running out of space. All of you will be using the cloud every day without even knowing it. We are right now. And when you use and watch things like Netflix, it automatically recommends a similar program that you might like. And that's driven by something we call machine learning, and that's driven by cloud technologies. Today you can buy, as an example, an internet connected fridge. These fridges have cameras inside that see when you run out of milk, and they automatically order milk online for you. That's the cloud too. Aeroplanes, something that amazes me every time I look up in the sky. They pretty much fly themselves. Automated processes as you engage with a bank, and soon we'll start to see completely autonomous cars. All of this based on cloud computing. If I could ask you to move on a slide, please. Thank you. And once all that data from those connected devices and things gets safely stored in the cloud, then that's when the next thing really becomes possible. And one of the most important technology changes that we've seen, certainly in recent years, and that's called artificial intelligence, or AI. And when you say AI, most people think of droids or cyborgs, because that's what we get to see in Hollywood movies, right? But in reality, AI is kind of just the ability for computers to have things like facial recognition, be able to recognize places and objects, to understand voices, to translate spoken words into multiple languages, and even to recognize human emotion. And actually, you might be surprised to learn that AI, will soon be everywhere. In fact, it's already in an awful lot of places already, as I've said, and you won't necessarily see that because it starts to become immersed and built into things like applications or computer programs, for example. The other important thing to note here is that artificial intelligence also can get more intelligent over time, and it has this notion of self-learning, and this is what we talk about as machine learning, and something that I referenced earlier on. If I could ask you to move on a slide, that'd be fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. So what does this mean for you? And I mentioned the word opportunities earlier on, and I'll say opportunities again, but in even better news, I guess the skills needed in the market to fill the rapid development of organisational change is not keeping pace. And this is really exciting, right? The way that we change, the way we live and the way that we work is changing. It's creating new jobs that never existed before, allowing us to do amazing things to help people achieve more. And you are the generation that is going to help us to shape, the future that lies ahead of us. Can I ask you to move on a slide, please? Thank you. Now, just to level set for a minute, I am realistic. I'm definitely not going to proclaim that this is going to be an easy journey. You have to work hard. But I would strongly encourage you to think over the coming, days, weeks, months and years about the pathways that you want to follow. This slide is an output from the World Economic Forum, and whilst the world of work is uncertain, we can be certain about a few things. There's going to be no substitute moving forwards for high-level technical skills. In fact, labour economists predict that I think it's in less than 10 years, around 80% of jobs will require deep and specific technical skills associated with programming, statistics, applied mathematics, engineering and design. Can we move on one, please? Thank you. And as I said earlier on, embracing these new opportunities is well, hopefully you'll agree, exciting. But it will definitely require you to take chances. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you, as I mentioned earlier on. Go looking for your chance, and be willing to learn at every step of the way. At this point, Samaya, I'd probably like to hand over to you just to spend a few moments talking about your journey and experience at Microsoft, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me. So hi guys. Sorry, there's an echo. Yeah, hi all. So I'm Samia. I'm a solutions specialist. I'm currently studying philosophy, politics and economics at Reading University, and I'm on a placement year at Microsoft. I will be going back in September. So just a bit about me before I go into my role and what I do in my day-to-day job. So I spent 3 years working in retail, and I spent a year working in politics as well. So I don't have a techie background at all. And I came into Microsoft a bit scared to sort of see like the whole of the tech world, and like knowing nothing about it, I was like, how am I going to do well in this company? But when I started learning about the tech and how the company works, I started realizing, oh, okay, so this could be a place for me. So I started learning about Power Apps. So Power Apps is a platform of Microsoft's. It's a low-code, no-code platform. So people who are sort of business-minded individuals, not IT or coder, they don't have coding skills at all. They're able to sort of build apps and flows which would automate their work processes. And when I started looking into that, I thought, how could I use that in sort of my career in retail, because it is supposedly for those people who are working on the shop floor. So I started thinking about my time at John Lewis, which is where I used to work, and I thought, hey, on the shop floor there were loads of breakages which would happen. Customers would drop loads of items, and recording that onto the system, it was a very lengthy process, and half of the tickets that we would raise weren't accurately recorded. So I managed to create an app on Power Apps which would automate that whole process and allow us to have accountability for all of the actions and the stages in between as well. And Microsoft gave me like the opportunity to actually go in and present it back to John Lewis, but then also many other customers as well. So like Sainsbury's or M&S, and just talk to them about it and the journey. And I think it's really cool that I was someone who came in without knowing how to code is now like building apps and doing that side of things as well. But then also I've managed to sort of using sort of like the growth mindset. Microsoft has a very a great culture in that you don't come in knowing everything, you come in with an attitude to learn everything. And if you have that attitude, you'll do well, not just at Microsoft but many other companies as well. And yeah, so I've managed to get loads of certifications, like learn as much. Like, I came in knowing nothing about cloud. Now I have the Azure fundamentals and the AI engineer exams under my belt. So yeah, I think the growth mindset thing that Joel was talking about, like, it is a very underrated quality in students, I think. So yeah.
Thank you, Samaya. Could we move on a slide? Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, I think whilst, as we've said, there will be no substitute for the high-level technical skills associated with programming, statistics, applied maths, some of those design engineering that we spoke about earlier on. There are definitely additional skills that we need in order to thrive in the more non-technical fields. So never underestimate the importance of things like communication, critical thinking, problem solving, curiosity, collaboration, dealing with ambiguity. I would urge you to think, for a moment, how you are building on the strengths that you have in these areas and how you can continue to build on them throughout the rest of your school and college life, as they are really, really important skills that employers will look for, whether you pursue, a work placement, internship, or indeed university and graduate positions. Can we roll on a slide, please? Thank you. So this is just really a sample of the types of IT related roles. Many of you, I'm sure, will be thinking about many of these as you think about how you can get ahead of your competition. It's tough out there, right? And to Samaya's kind of point, trying to build out your technical skills where the gaps are is something that I would massively encourage. And that is about kind of understanding not only where the market is today, but where the markets are moving forward, being able to spot that opportunity in the areas that we've talked about today. So how are you building out from an extracurricular perspective, your brand and your capabilities in those areas that are in demand in the marketplace, in the areas of cloud and data and artificial intelligence and machine learning and cybersecurity? Could we roll on a slide, please? Thank you. So I just wanted to close before we open on Q&A, just for a couple of slides that will give you a view of the types of roles that are available within an organisation like Microsoft. By the way, if you're looking at the top right-hand side there with Phil Spencer's organisation, get in the queue behind me, as I'm certainly at the front of the queue for testing games. But there are many different roles, as you will see here, and again, just starting to give students visibility of the types of opportunity for us is really, really important, so that you can go away and build the skills and capabilities around having that awareness of the types of opportunities that lie in front of you. Could you move on a slide, please? Thank you very much. So this slide shows the functions we have to run the business, and Jess, probably at this point I'd like to throw the floor to you just to talk a little bit about your experience, if that's okay, please.
Yep, of course. Hi everyone. My name is Jessica Milson, and I am a graduate. So I went to the University of Southampton, and I graduated in July last year. So I was lucky enough to be part of the Microsoft internship program. So as part of my degree course, I studied business management for 3 years, but I'd done a year in industry at Microsoft, and my role was to be part of the education team, and it was a marketing and events based role. So some of the kind of main projects that I've done during this role was creating large scale events, organising large scale events, and also smaller scale events, and working on campaigns and some really kind of creative aspects of marketing. So the main kind of skills for me, which I kind of learned and were critical in this role, is being creative, you know, having that communication piece, and also having the digital skills which are necessary to host these platforms as well. So that was a year's placement in the London offices, and then I went back to university for my final year, graduated in July, as I said, and was lucky enough to return to Microsoft in September this year as part of their Aspire programme. And the Aspire programme is what Microsoft calls the graduate programme, and it is a 2-year programme, and it spans across lots of type of roles, as Joel kind of briefly mentioned earlier. The role which I'm in now is a Surface category manager, and this is within the consumer team of the business, and I work across selling our Surface products in managed retail in retail partners across the UK and Ireland. This again isn't one of the technical roles that we have at Microsoft. It's a sales role, and again the skills which were kind of vital in my first 8 months back at Microsoft for this role are really that strategic thinking, which Joel touched on a little bit earlier, critical thinking, you know, really understanding some of the internal tools that we use, Power BI, internal platforms, and really having an in-depth understanding of the products, both for software and hardware. But you know, there are such different ways and opportunities to get into a company as large as Microsoft. So I can just briefly, I live with 4 other graduates that are part of the Microsoft Aspire programme as well. One of those works within the marketing side of the organisation. So they work on experiential marketing, which is helping Microsoft create their live events, which obviously recently are a bit more digital. And I have another housemate who is an Azure technology specialist. So they work on the local regional government sector and help local London councils with their digital transformation journey. And then also I have a housemate who is a project manager in global consulting services, and they deliver modern workplace solutions to customers. So that's just kind of a couple of examples of some of the different routes that there are in the Aspire programme, although there are plenty more roles as well. But there also is an opportunity as an apprentice at Microsoft as well. So within my team at the moment of kind of 5 employees, I have myself a graduate, and we also have an apprentice as well who's part of the team. He actually works with us 4 days a week and has 1 day studying, and has the opportunity to have like a national recognised apprentice qualification at the end of his placement as well. So that's kind of just a few different pathways and a few different roles that there are being at Microsoft and being in that industry.
Thank you, Jess. So I think with that, Amy, we'll probably pass it across to you for kind of questions. I think, how are we doing on time?
We are pretty much perfectly on schedule, I would say. So thank you very much to Joel, Samia and Jessica for your contributions. That was really interesting. Really great to get an overview of the company and what you 3 do. We have had a few questions come through. Now, they're mostly focusing on opportunities at Microsoft, so you've obviously sold it very well. So one is a student about to do their GCSEs. After these, they have to consider their post-16 options. Does Microsoft happen to offer an apprenticeship course that would be available post-16?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I think Jess touched on some of the points there. So there's an apprentice program. There's a very structured entry point, but also I think it's about, you know, probably doing all of the things that you're already thinking about doing and will continue to do, and that's, you know, building out things like your Microsoft Office certifications and specialisms, and then more broadly thinking about, as I said towards the end of the conversation, you know, where are the opportunities in the market and what types of roles and skill sets are we looking for. So something that I spent a little bit of time talking to the team about at UTC Reading, you know, is how do we build out the opportunity for students to continue to learn and develop around things like the Azure Cloud Platform, Dynamics CRM, Office 365, to build skills in those spaces ahead of, you know, whichever route you decide to take, whether that be an apprenticeship, an internship, a graduate placement, etc., etc. So there's both a very kind of structured and measured approach that we take with bringing people into the business. But I think, as I said, and probably mentioned earlier on, that there are also a number of things that you can be doing to drive your own personal development too, which will just, you know, hopefully better position you ahead of others that will be wanting to you know, do very similar.
Great, thanks very much, Joel. So slightly similar question, but about what types, so someone interested in joining Microsoft as a gaming tester or engineer, or asking what other types of roles are there for hands-on type of work, practical types of work?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll perhaps take that one. I mean, yeah, endless, quite frankly. I mean, as I said at the start, right, we create technology platforms that comes, you know, all the way through a fairly traditional kind of product design cycle. So, you know, smart people, you know, in my opinion, are the ones that have the idea in the first place. And then more importantly, the ability to take that idea from kind of concept and practically make it something, probably through to the more development side of the organization, where they'll have to execute against fundamentally a high or low level design. And we have people across the organization that span all of those skill sets for all of our products, whether that be gaming. As I said, for the gaming organization, you'll have to join the queue behind me. So that is hugely competitive, he says tongue in cheek. But, you know, whether it's that gaming side of the organization or in terms of the kind of more business focused platforms, I'd try and break down the thinking in terms of how we actually get to a point of bringing the product to market and the different roles associated with doing that within the different product and development teams. Great,
thanks very much, Joel. Talking about keeping on the opportunities, as I say, you've obviously sold it very well. You've got lots of people wanting to join you. What kind of timeline are students looking at? When are roles, apprenticeship programs released? When are assessment centres held? When are deadlines? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Jess, do you maybe want to just talk through? You've kind of gone through the whole life cycle. Is Jess still on? Does she maybe want to just mention a couple of words on that?
Yeah, sure. As part of my degree, when I signed up to my degree in first year, I always kind of knew that I was going to be doing a placement year. I signed up to a business degree with a placement year included. So it was always kind of top of mind for me during my first 2 years at university to keep an eye out. The main place which I found the opportunities is just making sure you know, you look on the careers websites or on the relevant companies that you're looking for. I think I found out about my role as a graduate in March time to begin in September, so there was like a few months beforehand that I was aware, and the assessment centres, you know, it is different dependent on the year and the timings, but usually like a few months before you're starting, and you know, there are many different methods nowadays. So assessment centres, definitely, I went to assessment centres both for my graduate year and for my intern year, but also you know, Teams interviews as well, and phone interviews. the one thing to highlight during assessment centres, you get a really good opportunity to stand out, to speak to different people, to be to have group tasks as well as individual tasks, and you often kind of get the opportunity to do some prep beforehand on particular activities. So the process is really clear, and you always kind of know the steps as you're going. But the main kind of tip is, on the careers websites, you always kind of get an idea on the timescales as they're different for the different organisations. I saw a question on the Microsoft apprenticeship availability, and all the information for that is on microsoft.com/careers and then apprenticeships UK. So that's where you can find that detail.
Thank you, Jess. That's really insightful. I would just add a couple of additional points as well. So you need to be 16 to have kind of a LinkedIn and a professional profile, but don't underestimate the importance of that and the ability to connect with people. So whether it's that kind of formal, structured route that Jess identified or not, for me, one of the things I look for in people is, be driven, be proactive, and differentiate yourself. And that's not just at Microsoft, right? That's the world as it goes round. Sometimes you might be fortunate enough for an opportunity to come to you, but go and search them out. Be really deliberate about what you want to do, and don't be afraid, to connect with people on LinkedIn. Be proactive. That would be the only additional thing that I would add to that.
That's great. We have in fact had a question about so you were talking about getting ahead and professional qualifications, and now you've mentioned you're building your professional profile. Someone was saying how you would suggest the best way for students to get ahead and to really be ahead of the field. I don't know if Samia maybe has anything to add to that, her insights from her placement year of what are recommendations to students who are interested in joining Microsoft and getting ahead.
Yeah, I would say I know Joel said it before, but take every opportunity that you have, and honestly just learn as much as you can. Don't be someone who goes around saying, oh, I know everything about blah blah blah. I came in knowing nothing, and I've gotten a lot out of this year. So yeah, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there as well and say to people, I don't know this, like, can you help me? Because people do appreciate that as well. So yeah.
Brilliant, great, thank you very much, Samia. And Joel, anything?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things to close, really, because I think some of these comments wrap into the characteristics, a lot of what we've talked about today. And again, this is now more Joel Bloomfield speaking personally than Microsoft, but be hungry. I love to see drive in people. Be passionate. Passion excites others, and they'll want you to be part of their team. Be able to deal with ambiguity. Microsoft's a large organization. There are many large organizations out there. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people involved. Be able to pivot, change direction, be able to respond, and have your own ideas. That's hugely important to others. And yeah, absolutely. One of the slides I put up earlier on was around growth mindset. Samaya mentioned it. Be a learn-it-all. Nobody has all of the answers. We don't expect people to have all of the answers. Nobody does, but embrace the opportunity to learn.
Great, thank you very much. Now I think we probably have time for a couple more questions if you're game.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
So we have somebody asking whether you could tell us a little bit more about Azure, what it is that sets it apart from other cloud services.
Yeah, no, it probably feels like I should take that one rather than throw Jess or somewhere under there. So I think again, if you look at the slide that I put up earlier on around market cap, Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, we're all seeing huge opportunity in the market, right? Hence the roles that are becoming available, and our requirement to hopefully have some of you guys join us at some point. I think in terms of what differentiates us, trust and security. So people will only put something in the public cloud that they trust, right? And myself included. And security is a message that I talk about in highly regulated industries all day, every day. And Microsoft continues to have more global certifications, in-country requirements. Some countries are heavily regulated, places like Germany and China in particular, when you come to dealing with large global organizations, have really in-country and specific requirements that you need to be able to support and suffice just to be able to trade in those countries, let alone putting data in the public cloud. So I think for me, the one differentiator, there are many, but it would be security and the work that we've done there from an engineering perspective, and working with regulators and government bodies across the globe to build that trust. You're on mute, Amy, by the way, if you...
Apologies, sorry. I was just saying, great insight, thank you very much. And so back to joining the company opportunities, could you give us some information on what qualifications would be required to get apprenticeship roles? I don't know if you have that information, or that's a consult the website. Yeah,
we'd probably need to get that one to you. I'm probably not qualified to answer that one if I'm candid.
Sure. No problem, no problem. What route would you advise taking to become a game or console creator? I don't know if that's one you can answer.
Yeah, so again, I think one of the things we've identified earlier on is that there's no kind of set route in, but for some of those more technical roles, of which you clearly need to have deep technical capability, all of the common pathways that you'd expect. So, maths, computer science, engineering are absolutely at the top of the list, because, there's some roles, no matter what we've said around soft skills, I'm not going to become a developer anytime soon. So, all of those fairly traditional pathways that you're already, by studying where you are, you're kind of well placed to embrace. So again, just make the most of the opportunities that provides.
Great, and I think we've already touched on this, but just to make sure that we've answered Memphis's question, what kind of programming opportunities are there at Microsoft?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. I mean, just to put it into context, we've got kind of in the region of 140,000 employees in just about every corner of the globe you can imagine. Just from a security perspective, we've got 3,500 cybersecurity professionals. There's about 13,500 developers that sit within the Office 365 Dynamics and Azure business. That's without people that are continuing to develop and build the kind of on-premise, kind of more legacy platforms too. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for developers. I mean, Satya, who's our CEO, has been CEO for about 5 years, took over from Steve Ballmer. He's an engineer by background. So, we continue to have a strong engineering developer technology focus. I hope that kind of gives you some numbers just to think about in terms of scale.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And I think we've got time for one last question. Does Microsoft offer work experience for those wanting to kind of build their CV before they're at a point where they can actually join the business?
So it comes back to being proactive. There's not a formal work experience program. However, we, as individuals, do support people on work experience. So, clearly there's limits to, how far certain individuals can go. It's just impossible for somebody to have, with the greatest respect, somebody on work experience alongside you 52 weeks a year, for example. But yeah, absolutely. And that's where I would be thinking about, being really proactive, your professional network, being targeted around the particular kind of area that you want to do, and start to make connections within, with people within Microsoft, and leverage, absolutely leverage the advantage that you've got. UTC Reading are a showcase school. I would absolutely look to be leveraging, leveraging that, and, all of the schools and colleges within the trust are relatively close to HQ in Thames Valley Park too, right? So there's broader opportunity there, even if it's only just logistically, which perhaps other schools and trusts, etc., just don't have. Yeah, we're largely based out of Thames Valley Park in Reading and London. So just from a practical perspective, I think it makes it a good place to hopefully come. Yeah,
brilliant. So I think we will stop at that. I'm sorry to everybody who has asked questions that we've not been able to answer. We do have a limited amount of time, I'm afraid. I'll try and get your questions answered well, if you would like, if there's anybody who has a burning question that hasn't been answered, apologies, then please do send it by email to amy.sutcliffe@utcreading.org.uk, and then I can ensure that we get that answered by our panel from today. So it only remains for me to thank Joel Bloomfield, Samia Ahmed, and Jess Milson. Apologies, Jess. Thank you so much to the three of you for this afternoon's insight into Microsoft. It's been really fascinating and really, really useful for our students. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.